And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome today to Ask the Theologian. Glad you're here. Got my reading glasses on and ready to go. And we take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. I should straighten out my desk there. Because we want to be professional. And we look forward to seeing what's on your mind. You can do like Scott's done this morning and put a question in the live chat. I'll be happy to take it. And you can also go to askthetheologian.com. If you put a question in this morning, go ahead and put the word question in front of it. That helps us out a little bit. But we've got a number of questions coming up here that we are going to look at. And as promised this morning, we are going to start with Manny in San Antonio for the first question of the last day of the week. How's that? Manny in San Antonio. Let's see, my screen just refreshed. Now I got to wait on it and find Manny again. Sorry about that. And here we go. Okay, question from Manny. In Matthew chapter 25, verse 34 and verse 41. Matthew 25:34. Let's go to it first here. And we see that the king shall say to them on his right hand, "Come, ye blessed of the Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." Go down to verse 41. The king shall say unto them, "Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me." Now the question. These are all Jews, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why are some of them going into everlasting fire? Didn't they have promises to God, from God? Am I missing something here? Thanks again. Thank you, Manny, for always good questions. You know, first of all, let me say that in Matthew chapter 25, this is what typically is called the judgment of the nations, because he calls the nations before them and he judges them. And it begins, about, I don't know, probably about verse 25 or so. You've got the parable of the talents. And then verse 31 actually is where this begins. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, that's the second kingdom, his holy angels with him, he shall sit upon the throne of his glory. Before him shall be gathered all nations. He shall separate them one from another as the shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. Okay, this judgment of the nations. Some go into everlasting fire, everlasting punishment. Others go into the kingdom. Come, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Now, Manny has accepted, at least for the premise of my question, my assumption. My assumption comes from, I don't know, what shall we say? It comes from having done some study on this and put it together with several passages. And my assumption then is that these nations right here, gathered together all nations, these nations are actually the Jewish people scattered from about. So, therefore, as Manny said, they are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, why is it then that some of these would be the goats? That some of these would end up into everlasting fire? Don't they have promises from God? Am I missing something here? So, I agree with your assumption that my assumption is right. How's that? I think these are Jewish people. I think you run into some challenges that, unfortunately, we don't have time to totally lay the foundation here, but I think you do run into some challenges if you make it the nations. Well, for one, the biggest challenge you get when you make it the nations is, as I had already underlined in verse 34, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. The kingdom hasn't been prepared for the nations. The kingdom hasn't been prepared for the Americans, for the Chinese, the Indians, the Russians, the Belgians. It hasn't been prepared for them. It's a Jewish thing. So at least you've got to have the sheep. But then it's not really a judgment of the nations. It's a separation of the Jews from the Gentiles. And this does not seem to be a separation from the Jews from the Gentiles. This seems to be people who are, let's say, one class of people divided two ways. I think you've got Jews divided into those Jews who inherit the kingdom, those Jews who do not inherit the kingdom. Now, with that, I do not think, and we had a question about this not too long ago as it related to how do I interpret all Israel shall be saved. I think that you do come to the point of saying Jewish theology is, now we'll talk about the validity of Jewish theology, but Jewish theology is that there will be a resurrection unto judgment. We had the question on Daniel chapter 12 as well, verse 2. Some in Daniel 12:2, some, everyone's going to be raised, some to life, some to death, to paraphrase that. So with this, I think, I mentioned before, I think Daniel 2 is only the Jews. I think this is only the Jews. I think that Jewish theology is correct that when Messiah comes, there will be a resurrection, and at that resurrection, there will be a judgment of the Jews. So this means second coming, resurrection of not of everybody. I would say there you've got a resurrection of the Jews. Now, believers, let me back up a little bit. You've really got the rapture, and the dead in Christ are raised. They go up to the Lord. Let's presume they come back down with him in second coming. At the second coming, then, the Jews are raised. They then are separated, the sheep from the goats. And then at the end of the millennium, the rest of the dead are raised. So you've got those three resurrections. Two of them, they're called the first and the second because in that context, it's only talking about the Jewish portion of it. So you've got the resurrection of the dead in Christ, the resurrection of the Jew unto judgment, and the resurrection then of the rest unto the lake of fire. So, can a Jewish person go into everlasting fire? Yes, I think so. I think the nation has promises. But even in those national promises, the individual had to have a part of it. Let's go to, for an example here, let's look at John chapter 1, let's say let's go with verse 10, right side of the screen. He, Jesus, was in the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, that's the Jewish people, his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. Now, I think what you've got here is, here's the national response, they received him not. But there was some individual response. What did he do? He gave them the power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. So when it comes time for the resurrection, the age of grace has not started in John chapter 1, verses 10, 11, and 12. So when it comes to the resurrection, it will be here that these are the ones down in, verse 34 or so, who will hear the Lord say, "Come, ye blessed of the Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you." I hope that irons that out. Oh, Jay has a good challenge. He says, "I think I disagree with that." Because, and it's a decent challenge, Israel isn't numbered among the nations. So why does it say nations? And again, that was in what, verse 30, 31, 32. In verse 32, left side of the screen, shall be gathered all nations. Now, Israel is not numbered among the nations. You're exactly right there. There are the nations, and then there's Israel. However, the word ethnos, it's one of those words, when you come to it, you have to pause. Because the word ethnos is sometimes used of the Jewish ethnos. And the Jews are scattered to the ethnos, and they are going to be gathered together. So I think you can build a decent case anyway. It's a legitimate challenge, but you can build a decent case to say these are the gathering of the nations that goes part and parcel with this end times theology that's given in Matthew 24 and 25, and the gathering of the elect together from the four corners of the world, from the nations, that he will gather together all the nations of the Jews, so to speak. Now, if you, let's say J says, I refuse to accept that this is just the Jews, because it says the nations. Legit, but I throw it back into your court and say, you've got to deal with the fact that the kingdom is not prepared for the nations. The kingdom is only prepared for the Jewish people. Now, that would mean that you don't have anybody but the Jews that are sheep, and the rest are sent to judgment. You can build that argument that these are people from the nations that have become Jewish, because that's about the only way you're going to make it at the end, is you became Jewish and you became a righteous Jew, which then circles us back around to this is only Jews. Because once you convert, if J were to convert, he would be a Jew. That's what you are. Once you convert, you're a Jew. So that, in that sense, whether they're proselytized Jews, converted Jews, or of the heritage of Judaism, Judaism certainly has a place, both in the Torah and in rabbinical Judaism, has a place for people to become part of Israel, part of the covenants and commonwealth of Israel. Thank you, Manny and Jay, for the challenge on that. Uh-oh, Scott's turning on the air conditioner today, ladies and gentlemen. I was almost thinking today was going to be the day, the first time since probably October, that we did not light a fire when I got up in the morning. But I decided, no, it's a little chill in the air. I'm going to go ahead and light a fire. So that's what we did. Okay. Anonymous question. Are we commanded to rightly divide because of the new revelation given to Paul? Let's put a couple of things here. There we go. Paul does claim to have received this revelation, the revelation of the dispensation of the grace of God, which is given me by revelation. He made known unto me the mystery. And he goes on to say that mystery was not known, it was hidden prior to this time. So here in Ephesians 3, 2 and 3, you've got Paul given the mystery. Then in 2 Timothy 2:15 on the right, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Rightly dividing is definitely the way to translate that. It is a division word, a cut word. Separate these two things. If you've got a Bible that says correctly handling, it's not giving you the full story, because right division is the way to correctly handle the word, but you wouldn't know from correctly handling that you're supposed to divide. So you're told to go do something right, but you're not told how to do it. That's what the modern versions do with it. So rightly dividing is what you need. Now, are we given the instruction to rightly divide because of the mystery? I think that in the easiest sense, yes. But could you argue that the word of truth always needed to be rightly divided? In a sense, yes. You got to take it in its context. Okay. Those under the law, did they need to divide out that which was pre-law? I don't think, just going by memory, there's only 12 chapters. Well, no, I'll take that back. There's the book of Genesis. Is there anything in the age of conscience or the age of government that does not apply in the age of the law? I think that the law enumerates that which you would say. So there's some things in the law that you would not backfill, but there's not anything in the previous that can't carry over. So they didn't have quite the urgency of right division, because it would only be theoretical of, say, how far you can walk on the Sabbath, or mixing milk and dairy. Don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. Okay, that was not a prohibition prior to the law. But you can't go back and do it. So, okay, now you do it. Those people, did they do it? Did they not? It becomes a theoretical discussion. So the sharpness of this command, the urgency of this command, rightly dividing the word of truth, really does come with the revelation of the mystery. Because even Peter and that early little flock, they're doing the works of the law. They're meeting in the temple. Remember, you had to do the works of the law to meet in the temple. They didn't just let you in as a common Baptist. So had to bring this in and carry it out. So some degree, really the right division prior to the revelation of the mystery, right division was a lot more, hey, just be sure you use the context. Now, it really does make a fundamental difference on how you express your Christianity. Again, many of you are either struggling to find a church or frustrated with your church, or you left your church over this issue of they don't rightly divide. You would raise it to the point of, I got to have a separation of fellowship here because of this. And that becomes, the urgency there has to do with Paul received a new revelation. Even with the arrival of Jesus, the nativity, the life of Jesus, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, the sending of the Holy Ghost on the day of Pentecost, these were not fundamentally new revelations. These were fulfillments of prophecy, things they had been told about. Now, some of them were pretty hidden, but then they were made clear before they happened, and it doesn't fundamentally change it. Even the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ confirms, yeah, he's the Messiah. I see it now, how he fulfills these scriptures. I didn't see it then, but yeah, it all comes together. It's a confirmation that the way I'm going and the way I've been going, if you're Peter, the way I've been going for the last 3 years is the right way to go, save a few mistakes that I wish I hadn't made. But that's the way to go, and I'm going to keep at it. I'm going to stay right here on this path. But you get the revelation of the mystery, all of a sudden everything changes. I guarantee you all could give the example here, but when you discovered the revelation of the mystery, it completely changed your Christianity. If a pastor out there, like me, discovers the revelation of the mystery, it totally changes his ministry, his preaching, everything else. It is fundamentally different. I need to write, I've thought about this for a long time, I need to write a little pamphlet for people who come into Taos First Baptist Church, because they don't know they're coming into something that's fundamentally different. This nice little Baptist church right along the way. Let's go in there. That'll be cool. That's all they know. And they come and they hear. I've shared this many times. They come, they hear, they like the sermon. Because typically one sermon isn't so fundamentally filled with right division that if you're not a right divider, you say, oh, that's wrong. Every now and then you hit a topic like that. But, typically, like when I'm talking about Cain or I'm talking about David, it's like, oh, wow, I like that. It's real detailed, kind of academic, encourages me and blesses my thinking. But you don't realize it's fundamentally different. But then you come back and you say, why did he do that with the Gospel of Mark? I don't know. And so I try to a little bit warn them ahead of time. But the issue is the right division issue. I was looking to see, I am not completely sure. No, I was looking on our website to see if it says anything about that. We've got, in kind of what we believe, there's some fairly strong statements in there, but again, the average person wouldn't catch it. Maybe we should put it there, but I need a little pamphlet. It says here's why my preaching's different. We've talked about it many times, and they can tell it's different. But anyway, are we commanded to rightly divide because of the new revelation given to Paul? I would say, where the water hits the wheel, yes, that's accurate. That's accurate. Kelly says, I'm here for Key Lime Friday. That's good. Well, going back to Jay, let's see. Wasn't the kingdom available for non-Jews who honored Jews? I would say not really. There was entrance into the millennium for non-Jews who honor Jews. But to inherit the kingdom prepared for you, as in you are part of this kingdom, not really. There are the nations that are going to be there. I think that's a separate matter from Matthew chapter 25 on exactly how that happens. Thanks. While we're here on this verse, I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit, but let's go ahead and state, actually, I think I might have had this like 2 days ago, but I'm going to go ahead anyway. And let's look at, again, 2 Timothy 2:15. And I'm sure I did have this, but let me see if it popped up. I noticed the other day I've had a problem on Ask the Theologian. The questions are not completely popping up. There's the two we had this morning, so that worked. Let's see. Here we go. The Catholic Church. Yeah, I think for some reason some of those didn't click in there, and so I think there's not a clickable answer there. But let's, the question from Kelly, who's here for Key Lime Friday, is can you explain what approved unto God means in 2 Timothy 2:15? Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed. What we talked about the other day is it cannot conflict with the things that we know about being complete in Christ. It doesn't have anything to do with salvation, which is by grace, not of yourselves, not through works. It can't have anything to do with our sanctification. The righteousness of God is within us. We are complete before Him. So what does it mean? Because when we think approved, we think, okay, you passed the test. And the word, I think it's dokimos. Yeah, I wanted to double check that. The word is dokimos. And that is let me check the root word on that. Dokeo. Yeah, the root word dokeo means to think, to seem, to suppose, to seem good, to please. So study to show thyself pleasing before God. Like, probably shouldn't use this when we're supposed to be rightly dividing in that verse, but in the Old Testament, you had, well, even with Cain and Abel, you had one sacrifice that was pleasing, another sacrifice that was not pleasing to God. Now, Cain, it almost looks like, hey, Cain, you're accepted before me. Just do something that's pleasing. Go back and redo this. It's all good. I think in a sense then, we are approved by God. We are saved. We are in Christ. We have the righteousness of God within us. We are complete in Him. But when we stand before Him, we really want to give something that is pleasing in His sight. We want to be the gift that is pleasing. Now, this is kind of a works-based song, and I probably shouldn't recite it, but there was a song years and years ago, I recite every now and then, that says, must I come and empty-handed, thus my dear Redeemer meet? Have no gift with which to greet Him, lay no treasure at His feet. I think to be approved by God is in that sense that, hey, here I am, and I want to present myself a living sacrifice. I want to really satisfy. So we had our windows washed the other day. I never paid anybody to wash windows before, but there's this kid on the internet, and he seemed nice, and he had some good reviews, and he was starting a new business. I'm like, let's help the kid. And he came, he said how much it was. I said, okay, do it. Wash the windows. Because we have some high windows, and they hadn't been cleaned in 5 years, Do it. Well, it turns out this kid is a monkey, first of all, able to hang from a finger and get to places you can't get clean. And did just this spectacular job. I was going to pay him one way or another because, we agreed to it. So he had the money, but man, he got the thumbs up. He got the 5 stars. So in that sense, we're not getting a crown. It's nothing other than, hey, God would use us as an example, saying, that's good. What he or she is doing with the Word of God, that's good. Excellent. I like that. Even among our children, we don't disinherit our children, but every now and then, we say to the other kids, hey, wow, they did good on that one, didn't they? So that approved. The word dokimos, actually came from, it's an etymological fallacy to carry it too far, but it actually came from the trade circumstances in the old world where coins actually were of value. Coins were made out of, silver and gold and brass and all that kind of stuff. And on that coin, and here I've got a fake coin right here. On that coin, they could take the pocket knife and just shave it off a little bit. Leave it a little sandpaper, get a few of those gold flakes. You do that, nobody's going to really know. But do that enough times, you build up a, nice little thing on the side. That's why they started putting those ridges on the outside, by the way. So you could tell if people had done that. Because that was a coin that was based upon weight. So study to show thyself as one who hasn't taken shortcuts. You didn't take the easy approach. You really put everything into it. You are honorable with the gifts that have been given to you. You're going, even though you're not Israel, to whom much is given, much is required. Out of grace, you say, hey, I want to stand before him, and I want him to say, that was good stuff. I'm proud of you. There you go. That's my take on approved by God. Thank you. Kelly in Pennsylvania. Let's see. Alex in London. Good to see you. Alex has a question that actually I saw yesterday and didn't have time to get to it. Wanted to get to it here today. He said, can you please add to your prove it list? Do I have? I'm not sure. I might. I don't. Or do I? I think I can pull it up here. Well, it's the working version. There we go, right here. The Randy White Ministries Labor Day Bible Conference. Prove it! There we go. I had the more, what do you call that? Artistic gavel. But my family said, no, you need a gavel that looks like a gavel. So that's what we've got so far. Who knows? Might change. I just got to hurry up with it. But anyway, it's the Labor Day Bible Conference. I'm going to do this Prove It, and we're going to set out in an apologetic to prove some things, like maybe you're not a saint, like maybe biblical Christian chronology is almost always wrong. Like, I should say, Christian chronology of the Bible is almost always wrong. Maybe December 25th is actually maybe the day Jesus was born. Let's prove that. Hebrews was written by Paul. I think that'll be fun. Prove it. Believing Jews were kept under the law until AD 70. That's Peter. Prove the pre-tribulational rapture. Prove that there is no such thing as an old sin nature. And now, Alex says, can you please add the gospel, I'm writing this down right now, the gospel of Christ is not the grace gospel. You get, where would it be? Romans, 1:16. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. Everybody, Alex, takes that to be the grace gospel. But what if it's not? I don't take it that way. I think the gospel of Christ is different. But the gospel of Christ is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Therein, in the gospel of Christ, is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith. Could it be that that's not the grace gospel? Prove it. I'm adding it to the list, Alex. Why don't you come over? hop across the pond and come on and be a part of it. Let's go to William Aliso Viejo, California. And take a look. Which of these two do you think is the lesser of two, how's this wording? The lesser of two less wrong doctrines for choosing church? Calvary Chapel or John MacArthur churches? Just in case I'm left with these choices. Okay, in California, those would be the prominent, let's say, Bible teaching churches. Would be Calvary Chapel and John MacArthur churches. Now, I don't know, Kelly in Pennsylvania, for example, Timothy in Grand Rapids, I don't know that would be the same. Even Jay in Tennessee, I think your choices probably would be different, but Calvary Chapel and, of course, John MacArthur, both of them, born and raised in California, so to speak. And so you get a lot of MacArthurites there. You get a lot of Chuck Smithites, Calvary Chapel. Now, if you had to go to one or the other, the lesser of two wrong doctrines. This one's less wrong than that one. They're both going to be kind of hard. First of all, let's talk Calvary Chapel. Calvary Chapel is undergoing now a division within the Calvary Chapel movement. And J.D. Farag, is that how you pronounce his name? In Hawaii, a fairly large, a very large Calvary Chapel there has just left the Calvary Chapel movement because there is a leftward drift in the Calvary Chapel movement. Chris Quintana is another one of those. Said, no, we're out of here. We're not doing that anymore because the Calvary Chapel has drifted. But let's just suppose you've got an old style Calvary Chapel, and you've, as far as I know, MacArthur churches are all about the same. Between the two, I would choose Calvary Chapel. Because I can't stomach the Calvinism of John MacArthur. I know he calls himself a leaky dispensationalist, but his dispensationalist leaked. It's all drained out. He was leaky too long. John MacArthur really does have a works-based salvation, which all of Calvinism is works-based salvation. But his is especially there, if you read the Gospel According to Jesus, which just, the title of it just shouts out, I don't know anything about right division. And John MacArthur is supposed to be the verse-by-verse exegetical expert, but he doesn't recognize that Ephesians 3 talks about a brand new dispensation. You'll be more likely to be able to convince a Calvary Chapel crowd toward grace. And if I were to do it, I would start with grace. Calvary Chapel will be okay with grace. They probably love it. And if you can start with grace, and then you can get into, hey, how come this grace is here? John MacArthur, not so much into the grace thing, because Calvinists can't be into the grace thing. And because Calvinism isn't grace, even though they have the gall to call it the doctrines of grace. The doctrine of grace is that God in his glory damned most people to hell. He did it out of grace. Oh, this wonderful grace, because I happen to be one of the chosen ones, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't God gracious, even though you're going to burn forever? All to his glory, praise and worship to God, who's burning you in hell. Isn't he gracious? I don't know how you get around that if you're Calvinist. I'd love for a Calvinist to challenge me on that. Say, no, you misunderstand it. That's a straw man. Well, show me where I misunderstand it. I've studied Calvinism. It's what it looks like to me. And so John MacArthur, he's this law guy, what he is. I I would sooner deal with the music that I probably wouldn't like at the Calvary Chapel, but nah, I could put earphones in or come late or something. At least at the old style Calvary Chapel, they would teach verse by verse, and I could just encourage the pastor, hey, would you teach like on the life and times of David? You know, something that's not going to get into a lot of this. And they'd probably go with that. But here's what I would do if I were in California, I think. Rather than go to Calvary Chapel or to a John MacArthur church, I think I would look and see if I could stumble upon well, first of all, I'd want to stumble upon a right dividing group. But let's just say I don't know where to look. I looked on all the lists out there, and you know, there's 2 states over in New Mexico. I don't know what to do. I think I probably would check out the local independent fundamentalists. It might be horrible. Well, first of all, the local independent fundamentalist, you don't know till you get there. It might be a virtual Calvary Chapel. It might have a MacArthurite. It might be Calvinist. It might be free grace. It might teach the Bible. It might rant and rave about playing cards. I don't know till I get there. But I probably would try those out a little bit. And I probably would not even go too much by what you could figure out from the website. Because independent fundamentalists aren't known for their great websites. And they might not have updated it in 15 years. And it might just be virtue signaling out to their independent fundamentalist friends more than anything else. So actually get in there. And, you know, if you want to be safe, tell them you're on vacation. Don't tell them you live in the neighborhood. I'm on vacation here. Thank you. I'll give you my address. You can put in my address. You know, if they want an address, and you can put in mine. I'll vouch for you. Sit through a service and check. If you can find a solid Bible teacher, or you can find a young guy that's got some heart and passion that could be taught, I think the independent fundamentalists have less constraints on their theology than others do. Denominationalists, they get the pressure from the denomination. Calvary Chapel, really kind of same thing. MacArthurites, they're in a bubble. And that can be true with independent fundamentalists too, but you might find an exception. Might. Now, as somebody said, I go to a local independent fundamental church. Legalism on crack. And that can be so true. So you might get into one of those, in which case, you know, you haven't made any forward movement. Unless, again, if it's a kid, there's possibility. Because those independent fundamentalist kid preachers, and they're about the only group, by the way, that's actually developing preachers from within. So good for them on that. Those kid preachers, they're parrots. So hey, you know, make a project there. Because they're decently intelligent and they do respect the word. You got that starting for you. So maybe. Now, A related question, thanks William, in Aliso Viejo, California. A related question from Pastor, no, not from Pastor Timothy. This is from Tim in Nebraska. Says, I view Calvary as soft Pentecostals. Would you agree? Yes, I would. They are, I would view most Southern Baptists as soft Pentecostals too, but they are more Pentecostal than the Southern Baptist. The Southern Baptist many times are not Pentecostal in their theology, even though they may be in their expression, but the Southern Baptists don't know how to articulate why they're not, if they're not. But Calvary Chapel really basically articulates that they are. If you look at Calvary principles, they accept all of the gifts, including the speaking in tongues, the healing, and all that for today. Now, the difference, and the reason I think Tim calls them soft Pentecostals is because they don't encourage it in public settings. So they're private Pentecostals. But, that in and of itself, it's a little, I don't know, can I say sleazy? It's a little sleazy. Because if you read that closely, what Chuck Smith said about it basically is, yeah, we believe in all of that, but it's not good for church growth. Makes people uncomfortable, and so we don't do it when we gather together. That's kind of sleazy to me. I think, if you got it, own it. Just take it. I don't know if you all will like this or not, but the other day I was in the convenience store, and the young man that works there had this tattoo, and it said blessed. And so, you need some sort of conversation. And I see him all the time, but I never knew he had a tattoo because he always has long sleeves. And I said, oh, is that tattoo new? He said, no, it's old. I always cover it up. He said it was a bad mistake. And I just said, own it. You got it. Own it. I mean, it wasn't like, obviously that's not, even if now he rejects God or whatever, and he doesn't think he's blessed or whatever, it's like, it's not offensive or anything. Just go, wear the short sleeves. So that's what I would say to Calvary. You got the tattoo. Just go ahead and own it. I mean, it's yours. So yeah, I agree. Calvary, soft Pentecostal. That's true. So many places. I thought we established that the pointy pocket square was ostentatious. We did. And I decided, it's like I need to fold it the other way, and I don't know. I'm just going to own it. Okay, let's see. Where did I leave off? Anonymous question. Why wouldn't the rich man and Lazarus be a parable, and does it even matter? Thank you. That is what? Luke... Luke 16, beginning in verse 19. Let's look just briefly. There was a certain rich man, clothed in purple, fine linen, fared sumptuously. There was a certain beggar named Lazarus. Now, if it's a parable, there was not a certain rich man. Speaking of owning it, is it a little bit deceptive to have all of this detail and not say, let me tell you a parable about? To give some indication. That seems a bit deceptive to me, because I want to take the Bible literally, and that's going to be my default. So if I don't default here, I have to have a good reason why. Why aren't you going with the default? So if this is a parable, I have to work hard to explain that it is a parable. And let me pull, I've used this example before, but Acts chapter 2, verse 16, right of the screen. This is that. We talked even just the other day. I said, it's amazing how many dispensationalists will actually say in their commentaries, this is that means this is not that. Ooh. Why don't you just take it for what it says? This is that. Now you could say Peter was wrong or whatever you want to do, but he said this is that. Same with this. There was a certain rich man, and there was a certain beggar. So how do you take this and say there was not actually a certain rich man? He wasn't certain at all. In fact, he never existed. Nor there was this certain beggar named Lazarus. Is a beggar with an A. It seems hard to me to, the hermeneutical principle. I try to model, here's how you teach the Bible, here's how you study the Bible. So if I took this as a parable and I just said, hey, folks, this is a parable, somebody in the congregation is going to say, a parable? Well, that doesn't read like a parable. Because when I read the parables, it becomes pretty obvious. Lord, why are you speaking in parables? He told them a parable saying, it's like announced, it's this neon light shining on it. Parable, parable, parable. So that's problem number one on it being a parable. Now it doesn't totally eradicate it, but you're gonna have to explain and the burden of proof would be upon you to show that this is a parable, not a reality, when it reads like, the grammar is like a reality. Then, if it's a parable, you go back to, I don't know, will I be able to find it quickly enough? In the book of Matthew, let's see, it's chapter 13. And you've got this, I'll show you what I'm looking at, over here on the right side, a parable, another parable. He keeps talking, here's another parable. That he said, and all these things Jesus spoke to the multitude in parables. Without a parable he spake not unto them. That it might be fulfilled, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things kept secret. Now, I think this issue right here, utter things kept secret. And then let's go on down, let's see, declare unto us the parable, he answered, he that soweth, and he gives the answer to the parables. And there's another passage I want to bring out, but let's see, have you understood these things, therefore... Okay, there he finishes the parables. So I'm done. So I'm gonna stick. I'm not finding the exact verse I want, but I'm going to stick with this one right here. I will utter things which have been kept secret. I think that parables, all of them, give a mystery of the kingdom. I could build that with a little more time of looking through Matthew 13 more closely, or go to our series on the parables of Jesus. And I build the case to say a parable teaches about the kingdom. It doesn't teach about heaven. It doesn't teach about the economic situation of the first century. It doesn't teach about how to win friends and influence people. It doesn't teach about how to get along with a stubborn boss. It doesn't teach any of that. A parable gives information about the kingdom, especially the parables of Jesus. That's the one I could prove through the scripture. So, if this is a parable, and that's my hermeneutical principle, that that's what parables do, then I've got to find a mystery of the kingdom revealed, other things that have been kept secret. I've got to find that within the rich man and Lazarus. So it makes a difference in terms of the finer points of hermeneutics. How's that? And if you get the fine points of hermeneutics messed up, you're going to end up with some bigger issues. Now, here's the reason that some people want this to be a parable instead of the reality. There was a certain rich man, I think means there was a certain rich man. Just like I think this is that means this is that. I'm just dumb enough like that to take words for their meaning. The reason that some people don't want that is because they don't like what Jesus said in Luke 16, beginning in verse 19. Because they don't believe in a conscious existence after death. And so they will make it into a parable. And then basically they will say, not only is it a parable, but it's not even true. What Jesus was doing was condescending down to their belief, and he was addressing their belief without ever telling them that they got it wrong. I think it's a whimsical idea, when it would be better to say, okay, if I am going to defend a soul sleep, I've got to deal with what Jesus said and assume he said it plainly and honestly in Luke chapter 16. So how can I hold my position and get over Luke chapter 16? I think what they have done is not robust. They said, well, Luke chapter 16 is not really there. My lying eyes, because it sure looks to be there to me. So then I would want to say, okay, you tell me this is a parable. Let's go back and deal with the issues of parables and on, the things that we could look at, the things that I've mentioned here. So I do not think it's a parable. The reason I don't think so is because it just doesn't read that way. Line up the parables and I think that you'll see, hey, the parables announce themselves as parables. And when I did the series on the parables of Jesus, I said, if it doesn't tell me it's a parable, I'm not going to take it as a parable. So I think it's fairly clear there. Okay, wow, I ended up with some questions that I didn't get to, and I've got, let's see, I've got Cain and Abel question. I've got, I'm taking Scott's because it's relevant, it's timely. I've got a question from Dan. I've got a question from, oh no, that's a comment. I've got an anonymous question about once saved, always saved. That's where we're going to start on Monday, is once saved, always saved. But let me stop with Scott's well-worded question. What's happening with the trash baby university children in New Mexico? The lamestream media doesn't tell us much about how it goes in flyover country. Yeah, so there was a little bit of Palestinian rally that took over the Student Union building and at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Fortunately, it wasn't all that big. Fortunately, they arrested the people who did it. Now, they probably let them go in 15 minutes, but they got them out of there. They arrested them. Didn't let it go anywhere. But what I did hear on the news last night, I think they arrested, was it 16 or 21 people or something like this? Which is not a lot of people. But of the 16, I want to say 5 of them, I know the 5 number is right. The other, I may be off. It's not less than 16. 5 of them were actually students of the University of New Mexico. So you've got paid agitators that are coming in to do this. Or if they're not paid, that's their MO. I mean, these are people who live to agitate. There are those people out there. And that's part of the plan, is to create chaos. We need a society with chaos, because then we can come in and make a solution. Got to have the chaos. Got to have the chaos. So that's why George Soros wants all the district attorneys to let the people out. I mean, let any criminal out. Let the bad guys out. We got to have chaos. It's a designed thing. So there's, of the University of New Mexico, which I don't know, has 10,000 students or something like that. But even there, they got, most students are like, I got finals, I got things to do, I got places to go, I got a better life than worry about I don't even know where Israel is on a map. I got, you want me to go protest? So there's 5 of them that they could find to do it, and the rest, they're just people that come in and sort of take over as if they are students. We see these little rallies take place in Taos fairly often. Taos is kind of a big leftist protest town. So when there's people, only when there's people, they don't come like on Monday. Monday, it's a ghost town here. Everybody's gone home, back to Texas, whatever. But they get here on Saturday, on Sunday, when all the tourists are here, right at the main intersection, and they have their little Palestinian rallies and whatnot. Now, I live here, and I can tell who lives here and who doesn't. You get this sense after a while. These people do not live here. There's absolutely no way they live here. And there they are. Yeah, it's a PR stunt. That's what it is. I think, by the way, this is not going to sound gracious, but I think that people who block traffic for their protesting, it ought to be the law. I think this is true for a pedestrian. It ought to be the law that if you do get run over and you do get hurt, you have no recourse. None. Can't sue the police, you can't sue the driver, you can't sue any. There's crosswalks, there's traffic laws, you have to go by them. I think if you're just driving down the road and a jaywalker runs out, you run over him, let's just say you break his little leg, I don't think you're going to get a ticket. I may be wrong. I think they're going to say, hey, pedestrians are not supposed to be right here. Here's a guy driving. He's got to trust the laws of driving. So, I hate to say it, but some of them need to be run over. Now, I don't want to be the one instigating that. But really what needs to happen is immediately the police forces need to come in and carry them crybabies out, like that video you probably saw. Carry them little toddlers out of there. Get them out. There are places you can have freedom of... I saw this last night on the news because some people had a protest that blocked the entrance, one of the entrances to Kirkland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. And, you know, after it was over, I think the newscaster said, you know, as they're exercising their free speech rights. No, they're not. Free speech rights are, yeah, you can stand over there on the sidewalk and you can hold your stupid sign and you can show your ignorance. That's free speech. But it is not a free speech right to do it in the middle of the road. And Americans need to tell their mayor, their city council, their sheriff, their, you know, all these local people, they're the ones that need the pressure, and they need the pressure big time if it's happening in your community. Because it's the local people that can fix that. Joe Biden doesn't even know there is an Albuquerque. You know, he's not going to come fix anything there. He's probably paying them. I don't know. So anyway, there's that. But anyway, my point on all that is those university children. They're people who actually live in their mother's basement and are paid by George Soros or just love to be agitators. Okay, next week we pick up Once Saved, Always Saved. Is it biblical? That'll be our first question of the week next week. We'll be broadcasting all week next week, and we've got Sunday morning, 9:45, 10:45, 2 broadcasts coming up. I got to run, ladies and gentlemen. I got an appointment that's going to be waiting for me in about 2 minutes. Got to get out of here. Thanks for joining us today. Always a pleasure. Come join us again on Key Lime Friday. Good to see you. And you take care. RandyWhiteMinistries.org. You come see us anytime. In fact, why don't you just come to Taos, New Mexico and see us? You take care. God bless.